With the help of Hashem, we are starting to learn Talmud Yerushalmi, Maseches Berachos, Daf Aleph. And how lucky are we that we are sitting as a community. The Chabad Solar community is here by the Kever of the Rambam. After we made the siyum of the Yad HaChazaka to right away to connect it to the beginning of the Torah Shebal Peh as it's brought down in Talmud Yerushalmi, and just a couple of short introductions to open up the Talmud Yerushalmi. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh says that when it says in Parshas Lech Lecha, Vayomer Hashem al Avram Lech Lecha, Vayomer Hashem, and in Vayera it says Vayera Hashem al Avram. So here God was speaking to him, and all of a sudden God was appearing to him. And why was God only speaking to him prior to him going into the Holy Land? In other words, he was able to hear. Masha'enken, when he came into the Holy Land, he was able to see godliness. That was because of the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. And there's something so unique about the Torah of Eretz Yisrael. It's not only because Avira the Eretz Yisrael machkim, but it's more than the Chachma. It's that the ability to connect to the God, to the godliness that's in the Torah that we have as it is available in Talmud Yerushalmi is exponentially greater as it is in Talmud Bavli. And Bahashgacha Pratis, the paginations of Talmud Bavli was made such that the Gemara begins on Daf Beis. And Chassidus speaks a lot about it. Why does it begin on Daf Beis? It technically began on Daf Beis because when they started printing, the Sharblat was Daf Aleph. They viewed the first page as Aleph. So when they began the Mishnah, the Gemara, they called it Daf Beis. That was the technical reason, but the reason why Hashem made it be so, as Chassidus tells us, that the Torah begins with a Beis. The Aseres HaDibros begins with an Aleph. Why? Because when a person learns the Torah, they don't make an effort, they can, God forbid, forget that there is a God in the Torah. Because it's so gishmak, and it's so logical, and it's so enjoyable, that you can miss the ikir. The ikir is the light in the Torah. So when you begin, that's the beis. Before the beis is what Chassidus says, making birchas ha-Torah. When the Gemara tells us that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because shaloi barcho b'tchila tchila, you have to make a bracha, you have to make an extra effort. Turns out that the pagination of Talmud Yerushalmi was already a later time. The first print was in Venezia, in Venice, and over there they already knew in Venice that the Sharblat is not part of the count. So Talmud Yerushalmi begins on brachas Daf Aleph, and every Masechta begins on Daf Aleph, but Bepnimi that's because, like the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, is because the Torah of Eretz Yisrael allows us the opportunity to see and not only to hear. And that's why you find in the many differences of expressions that in Talmud Bavli, the expression will be Ta Shema, come and hear. And you'll have in Talmud Yerushalmi, like you have in the Zohar, Ta Chazi, or Puk Chazi. We're going to have noch on Daf Beis, another expression, but it's about seeing, which is much greater than hearing. Another important nekuda, the difference between Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi, and that is that even though that we're calling it Talmud Yerushalmi, Stam Lahoir, that many people would call this Talmud de Bnei Ma'arava, and in Talmud Bavli they refer to the whole Eretz Yisrael as Maidiv, the West. We are in the West, and Babel is in the East. Actually, the Talmud was primarily compiled in Tiveria HaKodesh, and not in Yerushalayim. We'll get to that in a moment. So just speaking about West, at Al-Pi Kabbalah, we know that West is connected to Yesod, and East is connected to Tiferes, which is in the Seder of Midas. Tiferes is on a higher level, but it's more abstract, and Yesod is more down to earth. Which is why you're going to find in Talmud Bavli a much greater amount of shakel v'tariyah. It's common that in Talmud Bavli you're going to have a whole Gemara that's going to ask the Ka'arilei, my Ka'arilei, the one who asked the question, what was even the Havamin of him to ask the question? It's not that there are no questions and answers in Talmud Yerushalmi, but there's much less shakel v'tariyah. It's much more halacha l'mais. V'ad kedei kach that the Mishnah is called in Talmud Bavli Masnisin, and Mishnayos are called in Talmud Yerushalmi halacha. And as Chassidus says, that it's not only that halacha is that which is closest to our Maisa, but it's also because it comes from the highest source. B'dafka, because we have the availability of the Aleph, of the Oibishter, of the Ein Sof in the Torah more than in Talmud Bavli. That's why we are empowered to come down more into the halacha, even though that when there's a machlokes between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, as we'll speak out on today's first daf, there's always arguments. Generally, most of the Rishonim are of the opinion, as a rule, that we paskin like the Talmud Bavli because they came afterwards, halacha kibasra'a, and that's another important rule. The ones who came later knew that which was said before. But mitzat sheni, there is a certain magic in Talmud Yerushalmi. Now, just to know like this, that the paginations of Talmud Yerushalmi was really not fixed as we have Talmud Bavli. Aside of the fact that there were many mistakes in Girsa'os, and for many, many generations, people had a very hard time learning Talmud Yerushalmi. In other words, the signon is brief, and it's deeper. And on top of that, everyone had a different page number. And on top of that, there were many textual mistakes. So mamish in our generation, this is mamish connected to the coming of Mashiach, just to mention a big yasher koach to Oiz V'Hadar, that the work that they did, and we're going to follow their dafim, even though that in the Shas Vilna it's different, and many people have different dafim, we're going to follow the Oiz V'Hadar, and the art scroll, and a huge yasher koach to them that went ahead and they translated now, in Tavshin Pei Gimel, we already can buy the whole Talmud Yerushalmi translated beautifully in English. They're going to follow the Oiz V'Hadar edition in the dafim. Another couple of, I want to give a big yasher koach to Rabbi Yosef Grossman of blessed memory of the OU, who at least on some Maseches has the Gemara Yerushalmi online. And for me, I always listen to him. And if I don't quote him every time, a lot of what I can be repeating is coming from him. So a big thank you to him. He quotes from Rabbi Yosef, from Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, a fantastic gematria that when we say that Tzion b'mishpat tipada v'shaveh b'tzedakah, and this is exact gematria, not the makoilel, not with other, perfect, that Tzion b'mishpat tipada, it has the numerical value of 1,076, which is exactly the gematria of Talmud Yerushalmi, and v'shaveh b'tzedakah, which has a gematria of 524, is exactly Talmud Bavli. And as we learn in Chassidus, that Tzion b'mishpat tipada, that Tzion is the much higher level, the Etzem an Neshama, that never goes into exile, but we don't have access to it. And how are we poided at Tzion? Through learning Mishpat, to learning Torah. And we can say that that is going to go to Talmud Yerushalmi. So there's a tremendous joy that we are having. The first daf is actually a very short daf. And B'chlal, the dafim, at least in the beginning, for people that are starting, that's the way it is. You get drawn in because it's short and it's easy, and once we will be drawn in with God's help, it will become a lot more complicated and lengthy, and we are in here for the long haul with the help of God. Berachos. So another thing, that unlike Talmud Bavli, that we have Rashi, and to appreciate what Rashi gave us, the greatest teacher of all time, and then we have the Bali Toisvis, that we don't have Rishonim on Talmud Yerushalmi, Mamish. It was not learned that much. It was difficult to learn if people had access to it at all. So first of all, the Pnei Moshe, who was in the place of Toisvis, but that's Rab Moshe Margolius, who was a Rav in Amsterdam in the 18th century. I think he was born in year 1775. He's the only Mefaidish throughout the whole Talmud Yerushalmi. In Maseches Berachos, who was accepted to be the main Mefaidish, will be the Charedim, Rabbi Elazar Askar, right? He is from he was born in 1533, he passed away 1600, the Bala Charedim, and we will be using him. And as we have here also, in the bottom, the Rash Cirilio, that's the big Spanish Rav, Rab Shlomo Cirilio, also born, he was born before the Yidden were kicked out of Spain. He was sent into Galus, he was an infant then, and we're going to have, these will be the three main Mefarshim that we're going to have printed inside the daf. But from Masechta to Masechta, aside of the Pnei Moshe, there isn't a consistent Mefaidish. Okay, so let's begin with the first Mishnah. The way, again, the pagination of Oiz V'Hadar and of the art scroll is that we're going to have just a few lines of Gemara. But let's beginning with the Mishnah. And again, we're learning in Tveria HaKodesh, the Rabbeinu HaKadosh was over here. Can you imagine? The Talmud Yerushalmi was compiled over here. It was mamish the Roman persecution, which was the reason why the Amoraim needed Pasha to move to Bavel, and the Hashgacha Pratas that we get to sit in Tveri Ira Kodesh, Al Yad Rambam, Al Yad Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, even though the compiler was Rabbi Yochanan ben Nafcha, not to confuse one with the other, but Rabbi Yochanan was a student by Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Rabbi Yochanan was a child when he was 15, he was sitting in the Beis Medrash of Rabbeinu HaKadosh here in Tveria. So to have the merit to begin it over here is something of tremendous significance. So the Mishnah begins, and as we began quoting a Hasidic word from Rab Zusha from Anipoli, who was a Yid that people did not see him learn that often. So they once asked him, why don't you learn more? He says he opened up a Mishnah Gemara, and me'emosai, from Ema, from Yira, from awe of God, do you have to read the Shema? He says he fell off his chair, he contemplated the fear of God, and he's still there. He's still in the fear of Kodesh Hashema. So that's the real taich. The other taich is, from when do you read the Shema? And as we're going to go, it's a very small daf. We have time. We'll go to the Pnei Moshe. We'll begin with the Pnei Moshe. The Pnei Moshe every now and then is going to quote from Talmud Bavli, a little bit more juice. What's behind the kasha? Tana Akrokoi. You remember the Berachos daf base? The Tana is referring to the pasuk. It says B'shach b'chov kumecha. That Shema you have to read B'shach b'chov. We'll have to know how to translate that. We'll have two ways of translating the word B'shach b'chov, as we'll see in a minute. And U'v'kumecha, when you get up. V'hachi ka'amar. I'm reading the Pnei Moshe. Zman kriya Shema the Shchiva. Let's begin with the order of the pasuk. The pasuk begins, right, with B'shach b'cha, then Uvkamecha. In the Gemara, really, the Gemara gives another reason, because it says Vayerev, Vayiboiker. The Pnei Moshe is quoting that, so we're beginning with the night, B'shach b'cha, from when, answers the Mishnah, right, Me'emasai koyden nashma ba'arvin, Misha shahakoyanim nichnasim, loichal bitrumasim. Another thing to speak out, the Talmud Yerushalmi is so brief that it's common for them to take away the letter Aleph and the letter Hey. A good rule. Whether Rabbi Eliezer will be Rabbi Lezer, whether Rabbi Yehuda will be Yudah, right? We know Yudah is by us. Where did it come from? It came that the Yerushalmis, they were very makatzer, from brevity. Now there's much deeper reasons, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So here, a good example, instead of le'echoil in Talmud, in the Mishnah, the way they quoted it is loichal bitrumasan, from when they go eat truma. Now, when do Kana eat truma? So Rashi, Pnei Moshe reminds us again that when a person is tamei and they go to the mikveh, they can have ma'aser sheni right away. On the other hand, if a person is from the form of chusrei kapara, they can only have kachim after they bring their carbon. But even if someone is a mechusrei kippurim, like a zav, nevertheless, once they go to the mikveh and they have head of shemesh means seisai chavim, from then they can eat truma. Pnei Moshe says we already know them. Perek Yud Daled of Negoyim. The Mishnah says explicitly that a kohen can eat truma even though he was tamei, even if he has to bring karbanis, which will only happen tomorrow. But truma you can eat from the Seis HaKechavim. So why didn't Rabbeinu HaKadosh say straight from when can you read the Shema and Seis HaKechavim? So that's the way it works. It's called Milsa Agav Urcha Kamash Mulan. These are words from the Talmud Bavli. Yeah, we know that he's going to speak about it in another time, but he chaps around and we also know this detail as well. But it means from Seis HaKechavim. That is from when. Until when? Here we have a three-way machlokes tanoim. So the Tanakh, the Rabbi Eliezer holds at soifu hashmoyda harishayna until the end of the first watch. So the night has 3 watches. Really, we have a machlokes. How many watches? Well, let's go. The night has 3 watches. Why is it only until the end of the 3rd watch? Why is it only the first third of the night? Explains. Right, the pshat is that the word bishach b'cha doesn't mean while people are laying down. People are laying down the whole night. Bishach b'cha means like the word uvkomecha. What does uvkomecha mean? Not when you are awake. Uvkomecha means when you get out of bed, when you stand up. Bishach b'cha means when you go to sleep. Most people go to sleep during the first third of the night. That's the pshat of the Rabbi Eliezer. V'chachamim ha'imrim at chatzois. We're going to get to the Chachamim in a moment. Now, Rabban Gamliel Oimer, Nu Achiyal Amud HaShachar. No, Rabban Gamliel clearly holds that the word Bishach B'cha doesn't mean when you are going to sleep. The word Bishach B'cha means when you are laying down, when you are sleeping. Let's take out the word sleeping. When you're laying down. When are you laying down? The whole night. So you can say it until Amud HaShachar. Now, Maisa, this Maisa involved some sort of oinus. That Obo Banov, the children of Rabban Gamliel came, Mebeis HaMishta, whether it was a wedding, may the people here who have to get married, a mitzvah to get married, so there was a mitzvah reason. Or Sudas Ahavas Reim, they were having a fabrengen, Chayelul, so there was a reason why they were unable to say the Shema prior until a certain point, and they told their father, V'lo Kirinu Shema. Now, in Talmud Bavli, I just want to jump. I know I'm going back. I just want to read some of the Charedim. So I want to go to Daf Aleph Amid Beis. You have to get used to the words Daf Aleph Amid Beis, in middle of the medium-sized lines, because the Charedim wants to show right away that for those of us who remember how Talmud Bavli explained the back and forth of the children with the father is not the way they understand it in Talmud Yerushalmi. That will be the first machlokes between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. So Perush HaBavli, I'm reading the Charedim and Daf Aleph Amid Beis, Mamash in middle, the Hachram Relay. The Banan Plig Aloch, do the Chachamim, listen, they knew, even though it was their father, they knew that if the Chachamim argue with Rabban Gamliel, Yachid v'Rabban Halacha, Kerabim, the Chachamim said at Chatzois. They came back after midnight. What was even their question? Oh, so they had a question. What was the question? Is it that the Chachamim taka argue with you, Tate, and therefore we know v'Yachid v'Rabban Halacha Kerabim? That's in Talmud Bavli. Or they thought, why pligi? No, they don't argue with you. They wondered maybe the Chachamim also holds that B'shach B'cha doesn't mean like Rabbi Eliezer. It doesn't mean when you go to lay down. It means when you're laying down. Even according to Chachamim, it means the whole night. Why did the Chachamim say Ad Chatzos only Kedei Laharchik Adam Min Ha'aveda? If that would be the Pshat in the Chachamim, then they know Halachic Kerabim. Then they would be allowed to say the Shema, and that's taka what their father told them. The Bavli understands their shaila was, what is Shitas Chachamim? Does he hold B'shach B'cha means when you're going to lay down? Or does B'shach B'cha mean while you're laying down, which is the whole night? Since they didn't know what he meant, that's why they asked their father. However,
Wait, does that mean he's answered? Rabbi Gamliel is saying that it's while you're lying down, basically?
Means that even the Chachamim hold like me. That is what we learned in the Talmud Bavli. The only thing is that in Talmud Yerushalmi it's clear, there was never a Havamina, that the Chachamim hold, my friends, that B'shach B'cha means like Rabbi Eliezer. It's not when you're laying in bed, it's when you're going to sleep. Elamah, even though the majority of the people go to sleep at Soif Shmoira HaRishayna, the Chachamim hold, there are some people that go to sleep until midnight. Many of my Chavedim only go to sleep by midnight. I'm Mishagas. It's only 11 o'clock at night. But that is what the Chachamim hold. And the children of Rabban Gamliel never thought otherwise. So the Shaila will be, and that's why the Gemara Yerushalmi later is going to ask, what were they even asking their father? Yachid v'Rabim, halachic kerabim. So that's the first machlokes. Whether the Chachamim hold like Rabbi Eliezer, which is the sheet of the Bavli, whether the Chachamim hold like Rabban Gamliel, which is the sheet of the Bavli, and according to the Yerushalmi, the Chachamim say at Chatzois, they hold like Rabbi Eliezer b'shach b'cha means not when you are sleeping, when you're going to sleep. What's Chatzois? Some people go to sleep until Chatzois, and they wake up on time, but they go to sleep late. They manage with less sleep. Only Rabban Gamliel said Ad Amod HaShachar. So they asked the father, what should we do? Knowing that we paskin like the Chachamim. Okay, just to say, in Talmud Yerushalmi, the vart will be, they knew that Yachid v'Rabim, halachic kerabim, but they wanted to know whether B'di'evid you can do like a Yachid. It was B'di'evid, and it was not an oinus, and it was an oinus of a mitzvah. So he told him, yeah. He told him, yes. Amar lohem, again, he's not telling him his shita. He's telling them the halacha. Amar lohem, im loy olam uda shachar, chayovim atam likrois. And not only over here, Amru, not only regarding this, Elakol Amru Chachamim at Chatzois. Mitzvahs and Achi Adam Shachar. For example, that when you bring a carbon, that the blood has to be brought on the Mizbeach until Shkia, Linas Dam, that we know. But what about the carbon itself? The Chalavim, the Emurim, they can be brought up the whole night. Now, Chaviva Mitzvah B'Shaita. Chaviva Mitzvah B'Shaita. But if you didn't bring it on the day, you bring it at night. That Hekte Chalavim Avanim, that mitzvahs and Achi Elamod HaShachar. Now the Chachamim said, another example, Kol HaNecholim L'Yom Echad, all of the Karbanis, Chatas and Asham, all the Kacha. And even other Karbanis sometimes, right? You can have a Kacha Kalim, you can have a, what's a good example of a Kacha Kalim that can only be eaten one day and one night? Yakir, what's a good call, the Kacha Kalim that can only be eaten for one day and one night? Not 2 days. Will come to me in a second. Maybe a toida, maybe even a toida, which is kachekalim, not like the shlamim, a side of the lechem. Okay, wait, see, we have to remember. Chatas kachim kachim. And any carbon that has 1 day and 1 night, really, night is actually Lamud HaShachar.
In the Rabbi, we said there was a type of shlama that you only had 1 day and 1 night.
Yeah, no, which one is it? Asham, no, Asham is kachim kachim. Asham is kachim kachim. All Asham is kachim kachim.
Your father passed away and he had already committed the.
That's something else.
Then you only had one day and one night and 1 day.
Okay, okay, beautiful. Let's open up.
Doesn't that sound like he's not arguing? He's saying that the Chachamim are saying no, it's just to perfect you for Avera, but really you could go all night. That sounds like they agree.
So the way we're going to learn Pshat in the Yerushalmi is that B'di'eved, he's going to hold that you can do it the whole night.
Rabbi Gamliel.
No, the Chachamim.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even then, they say do it until Chatzos. They're never going to tell you Lachatchila do it until Amud HaShachar. No, it's B'di'eved, you can taich b'shach b'cha. It means when people are sleeping. That's the whole night. B'di'eved, you can taich it that way. But even when you're taiching it that way, the Chachamim would never say it until Amud HaShachar. Why? Okay, says the Gemara. Me'emasai, quoting the Mishnah. Me'emasai kodim shema ba'arvin v'chulei. So it says the Gemara begins with a kasha. Anan taninon, we learned in our Mishnah that from when Misha shahakoyanim nechnasim loichal betrumasim, from when they eat the truma, which is from Tzeis HaKerchavim. However, Tane Rab Chia had a Braisa, we'll call this Satay Sefta, or the Braisa of Rab Chia. He gives another Zman. From when can you read? Misha shederech b'nei adam nechnasim lechol pitam b'leili Shabbos. From when people enter their homes to eat the Friday night meal. When do people go and eat their Friday night meal? Is it from Tzeis HaKerchavim? So the Gemara Yerushalmi makes a statement. The statement is the Tani Yala, or there's a Braisa that says to clarify Kroivim Divreyim Liyoi Shavim. That's a Braisa. That this Tani Rab Chia and our Mishnah are almost the same time. It's taka not the same time, but it's almost the same time. Now, almost means is the Braisa earlier or later? It's not clear. I want to go into Daf Beis, but Pashat have a little time over here. So asks the Gemara. The first kasha we're learning. How can it say in the Braisa and the last line on Daf Aleph Amid Beis that the Zman of Rab Chia and the time of the Mishnah are Keroivim? They're not Keroivim. Frag the Gemara, Isa Chamei. Guys, look inside the Charedim. Isa Chamei says the Charedim Talmud Parech. The Gemara is asking. Isa Chamei means boy urei. Boy urei. Come and see. What's the kasha? When is that? Look at the words of the Yerushalmi, guys. Yemamohu ve'im koich. It's day and night. Day means it's the end of the day and the beginning of the night. That's Tzeis HaKerchavim. That's Tzeis HaKerchavim. Tzeis HaKerchavim is the day ended and right away the night began. But the Tani Rab Chia, when people go eat their meal Friday night, when do people eat their meal Friday night? Asks the Gemara Yerushalmi. Shah or vitarte. It's 1 or 2 hours into the night. Lailuhu. So asks the Gemara, Va'at, Omar, and you, the Braisa saying on Daf Aleph and Beis, Kroivim Devarem Liya Shavim, it's almost the same. How's it almost the same? It's an hour or two different. Answers the Gemara, Omar Rabbi Yosei, Tiftoid. Guys, let's get used to this. Tiftoid means resolve it. Let's be poised. That what is the Braisa talking about? Who is the Braisa talking about? The Elaine Kufrenaya, the Kikaya. Those villagers that live in small villages. The Oirchehain, it's their norm that mistalka, they remove themselves from their fields. Adahu Yamama, when it's still good in the day. Why do they go home early every day? Because the tzadei loin mikame chevasa, because the wild animals that stay away from where many people live, if you have few people, there's more wild animals. It's either the godly soul or the animal soul. Verstehst? If one is weak, the other one gets stronger. So they didn't want to be attacked by the chayas. So they would come home, and 1 second. They would come home early every night. But they would come home especially early They would come home early Friday. How early? Early to go to shul when it's still light, and to come home when it's still light. Now, one second. During the week, you can cook at night. So they would come home at night, even though they came home earlier. They went to shul mincha ma'ariv earlier. But when they came home, they began to cook supper. Since we're not allowed to cook Friday night, says the Pnei Moshe, so all of the food, like we just prepared before. So Friday night, those villagers, they would eat when it's still a little bit light.
So the people take Shabbos in early.
Kroivim divrayim liyoi shavin means that it's a little bit earlier, but it's not an hour or two off.
It's like davening Yom
Now,
Kippur.
I just want to give the shaila that we're going to go into. So now, Bishloim, when it comes to being Mekabel Shabbos early, guys, we learned this in Berachos, right? Daf Chav Zayin Yakir, right? Rav Matzli Shel Shabbos Ve'erev Shabbos. I'm reading inside the Charedim. Problem is that they would read. How would they yotze with the Shema? But Ukriya Shema Shekara Shema Beis HaKnesses Lo Yotzu. But they were not yotze. I'm reading inside the Charedim, and the Charedim tells us the Gemara is going to ask soon. Why did they read Bechlal Shema at night? Why would you read Shema at night? And the Bavli, who knows the answer from the Bavli? Because there's a machlekes Tanoi when is night, right? Shitas Rabbi Yehuda holds that from Plaga Mincha, you can call it a night. As long as you daven Mincha, before Plaga Mincha, you can consider after Plaga Mincha, which is around the hour and 50 minutes, to be night. That's the answer in Talmud Bavli. In Talmud Yerushalmi, we don't take that answer at all. At all. And we're going to deal with it, God willing, in the upcoming classes. How, in other words, being Mekabel Shabbos early, for Kabbalah Shabbos early, there's no problem. The only question is, what do you do with the Shema? You're not Yoitza, so why Bechlal would they read the Shema? God willing, to be continued.